It's time for today's face-off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams, ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-off on Fox Soul starts right now.
You have been found not guilty on all charges. Mr. Stillwell, can you please stand? You have been found guilty on count 64, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and not guilty on every other charge. So in this case, you are welcome to stay for the sentencing, or you can return to the jury room. I would like to speak with you in just a moment in the jury room. If you all do want to stay, you're welcome to stay. Is there any objection to the form or the legality of this verdict?
In this round, here's Quan LX.
Charles, we just watched not guilty verdicts come down in that historic YSL trial with the RICO charges, the conspiracy case against Young Thug and his co-defendants. They were indicted by the government, indicted by prosecutors, pretty much like they were the modern day black mafia in that particular state of where they are. In Georgia, I believe it is. Unbelievable, unreal. Those gentlemen's lives were turned upside down and inside out, and their families were destroyed and broke, many of them financially. Young Thug just pled not guilty to a sentence just a week and a half ago that says he pretty much was never not really guilty either. I wish he'd have stayed in the case and been found not guilty like his co-defendants. It's a disgrace. It's shameful, and somebody in the prosecutor's office should be held accountable for wasting tens of millions of dollars in this prosecution. And this went down as one of the longest trials ever in that state's history.
It was, in fact, the longest criminal prosecution in Georgia history, if you're talking about the length of the trial itself. It was a massive, RICO is the common term, which is racketeering, it's organized crime. But it basically was similar to prosecutions of the mafia, which is how it began. But I got to disagree completely with your empty umbrage about this. Now, what about the murder victims' families? What about all the victims of the criminality? Because there are a few things you got wrong. First of all, Shannon Stillwell got convicted of a felon in possession of a firearm. He got maxed. Let me finish, please. He got maxed out at 10 years with 2 years credit. Now Yak got him.
And was indicted for 64 charges. He got one out of 64 charges.
That's
a damn shame, Charles.
The criminal defense attorneys in this case did a fantastic job.
You know how much money they spent?
Did a fantastic
job.
The government at establishing some inappropriate collusion between the former judge and the DA's office.
Yes.
They attacked the DA's evidence with this Doug Weinstein that got the complete not guilties for DeMonte Kendrick, Yak Gotti. Fantastic job, obviously. I do think a lot of the media attention about what is some really significant ethical violations led to this verdict. I don't think anyone thinks, other than apparently you, that these gentlemen were innocent.
Well, that's what the jury thought.
That's
what the jury thought.
Just for Yak Gotti. Yo Gotti actually pled to 40 years, and that it was suspended.
And he should put that case absolutely on appeal.
Okay.
We should appeal all of that.
Okay.
Because the prosecutorial misconduct was so egregious in this case, they should go to jail themselves.
They should not, right?
They were absolutely unethical in this case.
That gangbang and murder people should go to prison, right? But when the state plays, when the state fudges or tries to cheat,
you mean?
Like Fannie Willis's office there in Fulton County, Georgia did, and she has a history of some very questionable ethics, then I think that we have a system that should not send people to prison when the government cheats.
So the government
It does
indicts a
not
man
mean-
on 64
it does
counts,
not mean-
and they get him convicted
it
on
does
one
not mean
possession of a firearm.
that
Come on, Charles.
these
This is wrong here,
criminals
brother.
are somehow all of a sudden anointed as these wonderful people.
But
that we
the
should
jury
applaud.
said that these guys were not guilty.
They were involved in a number of murders.
That's not what the jury said,
terrorized
Charles.
a community.
That's not what the
And
jury
there
said,
was a
Charles.
gangland war between them and a rival group that went on for over a decade, right? And they were brazen about it. So let's not pretend that they're a bunch of innocent people.
So the jury got it wrong?
No, I don't think the jury got it wrong. I think the government tried to cut corners, and the defense attorneys did a fantastic job exemplifying the corners that were cut.
They cut corners.
You're acting
Or
like...
they concocted lies.
Hold on. You're acting like...
fabricated evidence and supported perjured testimony.
You are acting like there wasn't an overwhelming number of defendants that took plea bargain agreements as opposed to going to trial.
This case alone right here shows you that the Justice Department and the FBI is out of control.
Okay, this was a state prosecution,
but
not
still,
a federal
the feds
prosecution.
worked with them on this case. Yes,
Okay,
the feds was involved with the wiretapping also.
Yeah, I don't.
Charles, this proves that this was nothing more than a
I
concocted
absolutely
witch
disagree.
hunt.
I absolutely
And
disagree.
they were
and
looking
I-
to get great
and I don't
promotions
think you believe
out of
it
the
either.
prosecutor's office off this case, and they lost.
Okay, they lost.
What about all the taxpayers'
because
money spent in
Fannie
this?
Willis's office did a horrible job and acted collusively with a trial court judge, and the media exposed it because it was getting extra attention.
Oh, so Trump told the truth about Fannie Willis.
At the end of the day, that does not mean that these guys did not do horrible stuff. And
Well,
the
why
majority
did the
of
jury
defendants-
reject the evidence?
Okay, for two defendants, and one of those two was convicted for felon in possession of a firearm and took 10 years in prison. You're acting like this was some sort of complete exoneration. and
But the guy who
wasn't.
took 10 years in prison,
Yes?
he was indicted on 64 counts.
Hey, he was indicted on
And
murder.
the jury said 63 of them are false, not true. We give you one.
Right, hey,
possession of a firearm.
The DA's
That's a
office,
damn shame, brother.
The DA's
That's
office
crazy.
did a horrible job. The defense
That's too
attorneys
much.
did an incredible
And
job.
who will hold them accountable?
Okay, what do you mean accountable? They lost.
Who will hold a DA's office that's out of control
if-
accountable and
if-
reel them back in on behalf of the taxpayers?
What we've seen in America is, especially in the last 20 years, is if it's established that they knowingly violated not just the judge, but the DA's office colluded with the judge, you're looking at the bar, and people lose their licenses. People go to jail. But I don't.
So
think
Donald Trump
any of
made
that-
these same allegations
I
about
don't
Fannie
think-
Willis.
I don't-
That same DA's office.
Well, Fannie, that was a far more complicated matter where federal money was being poured into that office, and she was pouring it into her boyfriend's pocket. And
so the whole damn
corrupt.
office been out of control for a long time.
Right. But it doesn't mean these horrible murdering gangsters, many of whom pled guilty, aren't horrible murdering gangsters.
It looks like several of these young men were not guilty.
Okay. There were, again,
Come on now.
two people.
And Young Thug got a sweetheart
Two
deal.
people.
And Young Thug got an absolutely sweetheart deal.
Well, if you consider being on probation for 15 years and you screw up that probation, you're looking at 40 years. That doesn't sound like a sweetheart deal to me.
Young Thug should appeal that sentence, man.
And what
because
basis?
this was
What
prosecutorial
basis for the
misconduct.
appeal?
Because they should go after the prosecutorial misconduct in this
You're
case.
acting like
They should appeal on the grounds of the
weren't
prosecutorial
involved
misconduct.
in robberies and murders, and then did rap songs
Well,
bragging
I'll tell you
about
what,
it.
there's
It's
two gentlemen
let's
here.
not pretend the truth
There's two
isn't
gentlemen
the
here that were
truth,
found not
Cornell.
guilty, my brother.
But again, plenty of people, the majority of them, already took plea bargains,
And
already
you know
pled
why?
out.
You know why? Because they probably could not financially afford to maintain adequate and thorough defense counsel.
You are assuming
and you and
facts,
I both
not
know,
an evidence.
You and I both
Mr.
know,
Farrakhan.
Charles, you and I both know that majority of people who go to prison in America are there because they're poor. And they could not afford an adequate and thorough defense. And you and I both know when the feds indict you, they try to financially break you so you can't pay
made
for
a
a
bunch
defense.
of money. They're very successful, both at the hip hop business
I've
and
seen billionaires be broke by the government when they get indicted.
I am all for applauding their attorneys' victories on their behalf.
Did a wonderful
I'm all
job.
for
Did a wonderful
shining a
job.
spotlight on prosecutorial misconduct. But let's not pretend that these awful gang-banging monsters
Miss
who
Willis' office
destroyed
is
lives
out of control, man.
and were responsible for murders aren't in fact bad people.
This makes Donald Trump look like he was telling the truth about Fannie Willis.
Well, Oz is a very queer place and has always been.
Yeah.
Even from the L. Frank
Very
Baum
much.
books, it's always been queer.
Yeah. I think so, for sure.
Gay.
Hey, we'll take it.
This week, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that and feeling power in that.
I didn't know that that was happening.
I've seen it, yeah.
That's really powerful. That's what I want. I didn't know that was happening.
I've seen it on a couple posts. I don't know how widespread, but you know, I am in queer media, so
Yeah.
that's my,
It's
you
really
know.
cool.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
Okay, Quanell, that was, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, the stars of the smash hit Wicked movie that was, of course, a smash Broadway sensation for decades, right? That turned the Wizard of Oz narrative on its ear and portrayed the Wicked Witch as actually a good person. But the actresses, Cynthia Erivo, a woman of color, who I believe has come out as being somewhere on the LGBTQIA space, and of course, pop star Ariana Grande, have given a series of somewhat bizarre interviews where they, the second one, the interviewee or interviewer was talking about how she witnessed on social media people holding space, and then they got all teary-eyed. I'm old. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't really think they did either. I think they were just contriving some nonsense. But you also have seen them repeatedly force feed the narrative about how gay this not just this play is, but Frank Baum's original children's books, the original movie, and it seems incredibly forced to me. Now, I consider myself an ally. I think that we should accept people and their orientation as however they like, but it's getting to the point where it seems so incredibly saccharine, and that it's just pandering, right? Because frankly, it's really not a narrative we need to force feed into everything. I think America, with some few glaring exceptions like yourself, is incredibly tolerant of and inclusive in 2024, almost 2025. But it does seem like Hollywood just won't be happy unless it is inserted into every single discussion about every single thing, which seems a little bit absurd at this point.
Charles, whenever you watch a movie coming out of Hollywood, whenever you watch an episode coming up, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, all of those little apps, for some reason, I agree with you in this.
Billion-dollar streaming platforms, not little apps.
That these billion-dollar streaming platforms is pushing the gay agenda.
Well, what's the gay
to
agenda?
The point, let me say this,
Okay.
to the point to where it's as though they have to interject a homosexual relationship, a gay relationship in every movie, in every sitcom, even when the relationship has completely nothing to do with the narrative being portrayed in the movie. Charles, it's as though you can't make a movie coming out of Hollywood now if you're not pushing the gay agenda in that particular film. I support people living the right to live their life how they choose to live it, but don't push it into everything because it's not necessary. Charles, I don't even like most of these films that have some of these romantic scenes in it when the romance between a man and a woman has absolutely nothing to do with the film, in my opinion. But to force feed this and spoon feed this to our children in particular, now they're producing all of these children's films. And
well, Wicked's not a children's film.
But I'm saying they're producing all of these children's films of animation now, turning some of the historical animation characters now into gay figures in these films. It's an agenda, Charles, that I believe that the American people, in fact, the American family, have to say do what you do, but don't force feed it to us.
Okay, so I have two questions, right? Initially, you said that you are supportive of people living their lives. Okay, that's news to me. I'm glad you changed. But you've taken, just a couple of weeks ago, you took the position that if someone in your family came out as gay, you would not be accepting of it. They wouldn't be welcome with their
I didn't
partner.
say that.
You said you would not
I said
welcome
my
them and
daughter.
their partner in their home.
I said that if my daughter
okay.
or my son
I said, I'm talking family
came
general,
out that they were
cousins,
gay.
uncles, anybody.
I ain't worried about the cousins.
Okay.
I'm about my sons or my daughter.
Okay.
If one of my children came out and said they were gay, I would say, listen, that's your choice. Choose to live your life however you want to live it. But you can't get me to accept something that God rejects. So don't think that I'm going to endorse, nor am I going to celebrate a lifestyle that God does not celebrate. So you can choose that path. You have the right to do that. But don't expect me to open it with welcoming arms and be a part of it.
Okay, so you're not welcoming to it, right?
No,
so
I welcome them living their lives, but don't think I'm going to open my arms
you're not
and
gonna
welcome,
love them
and
anymore.
I'm going to love them to death.
Okay.
But I'm not going to accept the lifestyle that God does not accept.
Okay, which God?
There's only one, my man.
Well, there's some disagreement
There's not
on
multiple gods.
I mean, there's some
There's
disagreement.
only one God, my friend.
There are monotheistic religions, but there are that
and they
all
worship
say the other
idols.
one are wrong.
And they worship
right?
idols. That's idolatry. I'm speaking of the one creator of us all.
mono
And
means
Charles, at
one.
the end of the day, in Islam, in Christianity, in Buddhism, and even in Hinduism, Charles, in all of the isms, the gay lifestyle is never promoted.
Hold on with the bell, man. We
It's
can
never
cut a segment. I
promoted,
got
Charles.
another question.
I know we're going to cut a segment because you want to cut one.
But here's another question. Okay, so you're talking about how they're making characters gay, but we've seen far more where traditionally white characters, or even white historical figures by Netflix and all these platforms, have been made African, right, of nature, or African American, right?
Name one.
Okay, Nick Fury for Marvel, right?
What about it?
Well,
That's a cartoon.
Well, right, but he was always a white guy.
It's fictional.
Little Mermaid, right?
That's fictional.
Okay, well, these are
The
fictional.
mermaid was never white in the first damn place. It's
You were
fictional.
talking about fictional characters being made gay.
No,
and you were complaining
I'm not.
about that.
Charles,
Hold
what
on.
I'm saying, in every particular movie that's coming out now in Hollywood, they're portraying a gay lifestyle in it.
No, but
and
hold
Charles,
on.
it has
What you
nothing
said-
really to do with
hold
the
on,
film.
But what you said was they were changing heterosexual characters into gay
And they
characters.
are doing that.
Okay, but you have a problem with that. But you don't have a problem with changing the Little Mermaid from a white redhead to a
But
black
that's
girl.
fictional, Charles.
Well, we're talking about, you were talking
Come on,
about
Charles,
fictional characters.
Charles.
Why are you a hypocrite?
Charles, we can't talk about
Things
animated
evolve.
We're talking about animated fictional characters, Charles.
Okay.
That can be any race. You got
Okay.
me? But what I'm saying,
But
Charles,
they weren't.
Wait a minute.
Right, like Snow White.
An example.
The new Snow White is Latina.
A few years ago, they had a play.
Things evolve.
They had a play here in Texas.
Okay.
Where they were portraying Jesus Christ and his disciples as being gay.
Okay.
That's an absolute lie, Charles.
Well, how do you know?
That is something I totally disagree
know?
with because the Bible rejects it. And one thing that Jesus said, I and my Father are one. When you see me, you see the Father. And God points out very clearly in the scriptures of the biblical Bible, homosexuality is still a sin and it's rejected by God.
Well, hold on. There's a lot of sins that you don't seem to acknowledge that are identified in
No,
the Bible.
all sins
But
are
hold on.
sins,
okay,
but we can't try to clean up one
God
over another and
heterosexual.
pretend like
How
one
do you
still
know-
is and another was
how-
not.
How do you know none of the disciples were heterosexual or
Charles,
homosexual?
well, give me some proof that they were.
Well, give me some proof they weren't.
Because
I'm
they
not
were
the one
married,
that took a position.
because-
You took a position.
because they were married to women.
You don't think
Let me finish.
married men
Let me
are
finish.
on the
They
down
were
low?
married to women. Two, they upheld the gospel of Christ.
Okay.
They did not condemn the book of
Hold
Moses
on,
and the
hold
law of
on,
the Torah.
hold on,
And so, Charles,
hold on,
these men
hold
lived
on.
according
you
to the
mentioned
scripture
the gospel
of the book.
of Christ. Where did Christ, from his own mouth, take issue with it?
Jesus said this. He said that I came to fulfill the law, not to do away with it. Not one iota of the law shall be changed.
Okay.
That's what he said. And the law of Moses states a man should not lay down with another man as he lays down with his wife. And Jesus said not one iota of the law should
But it
change.
also-
He came to fulfill
also
it.
says you shouldn't be mixing your fabrics, Quanell. It
Charles,
also said you shouldn't do
you
a
asked
myriad
me
of
the
things. No, but I'm telling you,
question
there are
when
all kind of
Jesus
things that evolve,
spoke about
right?
the
And there's
law.
all kind of laws in the Bible that you ignore every
Charles,
single
that's
day.
not what I'm saying.
And you just
But
fixate
I
on
don't
one
believe- I'm
to say,
Charles.
hey, gay people,
Look,
I
Charles,
accept
I'm
you,
not saying that.
but you're all going to burn in hell.
All sins are wrong, Charles. All sins are wrong, Charles. And if we don't repent from all sin, we're going to burn in hell.
I don't think we need to force feed the narrative like these two women are clearly doing in their interviews.
And that's what Hollywood is doing, Charles.
But the reason Hollywood's doing it is because bigots like you
that's a damn
still
lie.
justify hating
Hollywood
gay
has
people.
always supported sexual immorality. Always. Brothers and sisters, when we look at this YSL trial and them putting Young Thug and his co-defendants on trial in Georgia, and the manner in which they did, when they spend so many millions of dollars telling us that these were the worst gangsters on the planet and they deserve life without parole, only to see that sweetheart deals were given even to Young Thug because the evidence was so weak and the prosecutors didn't want to take a chance of it going to a jury like they did this particular case with his co-defendants. Now we saw the last two remaining co-defendants be found not guilty. Charged one with 64 counts and only convict him on one, possession of a firearm. These prosecutors' offices need to be reeled back in. Many of them are out of control and the taxpayers deserve better.
But again, I couldn't disagree more. I think Fani Willis's office did a bad job. They've done a bad job consistently. There was clearly some weird collusion between them and a trial court, and the defense attorneys did a fantastic job exposing that. But we can't sit here and pretend that there weren't tons of guilty pleas and a mountain of evidence of incredibly brazen, violent criminality up to murder that our government should investigate. And our government should hold people to account, or at least attempt to. And our juries, when they sense that the government is cheating, it's very fair for them to push back. But it was one defendant with not guilties and one only guilty on one count. You know, it's absurd. Much like in this wicked thing, it's absurd to hate gay people, but we also don't have to force feed the narrative. We should be more accepting, and we should all be allies to all of us, irrespective of orientation.
That's it for the Face Off on Fox Soul. We'll catch you next time.